Bryn Haworth is a British singer-songwriter and guitarist specialising in playing electric slide guitar and acoustic blues. He's originally from Blackburn in Lancashire. He began his career as a member of the Atlantic Records UK house band before going to the US to play with Bill Graham's band Wolfgang, supporting many of the major UK and US rock acts of the early 70s as they toured the US. Haworth returned to the UK in the mid-1970s, where he signed originally to Island Records as a solo artist. He recorded sessions for John Peel and the Old Grey Whistle Test, and played session guitar with, amongst others, Joan Armour Trading, Andy Fairweather Lowe, Cliff Richard and Jerry Rafferty. Having embraced Christianity, Haworth then changed record labels and began to make much more gospel-orientated music, appearing at Christian music festivals and joining the staff team at South London Vineyard in the late 80s, where he worked under the leadership of Marcus Mumford's parents. Haworth continues to tour and record and to do the prison work which he started some 30 years ago. He released his last album, Ready or Not, in 2021 and is touring the UK in May 2023. My name is John Hebden and I volunteer as a radio presenter at BCB Radio in Bradford in the UK. I met up with Bryn on Zoom in early May 23, a week before he was due to play in Leeds. And I began by asking him if he was touring alone.
Yes, I do an acoustic evening. I've got a couple of acoustic guitars, one in an open tuning, one in regular tuning, and we just do an evening, generally it's two halves and with an interval.
Okay, so you say we, you bring some technicians with you, do you, or is the we is you and the guitars? Is it?
No, no. My wife and I apparently we travel together, and but I do the concerts.
Okay, she doesn't do backing vocals or
no,
strike a tambourine or anything. Okay.
No.
I asked Bryn what material he plays live.
I'll be doing stuff, some blues songs. I'll be doing some of my own songs. I'll be doing some songs that people will recognize from. There's one from the 50s, and some of the stuff from the 60s that we used to play when I was in bands in the 60s, and it's just a smattering of connection with songs that most people know.
Okay. I made reference to your Christian faith during the introduction. Do you particularly play Christian songs, hymns, worship songs when you're doing a live concert, or not so much?
It depends. It depends on the audience, in the sense of where you are, where you're playing. If you're playing in a church, then it's fine. But I think it's a real mixture for me. I tend to vary what I'm playing. Because it really, I think people are interested in the stories, where you're coming from in your life, how did you get to be where you are doing what you're doing, and so it's a combination of songs, the things that have happened to you in your life, the things that have changed your life, the things that have taken you off on a different direction completely. I think those things are interesting, and so you just back them up with the relevant songs.
I asked Bryn which guitarists had inspired him at the start of his career.
When I first really got hooked on guitar, obviously it's like 60s, early 60s, you'd be the Shadows, you saw these great looking electric guitars, and we'd go buy these Fender Strats, Stratocaster and Telecasters back then. They were very rare, but they looked so great, and so you wanted to play just. And then you'd be hearing stuff from the America, like from by the Ventures, Walk Don't Run and things like that, and Perfidia, and just all this instrumental music. But then I heard Booker T and the MGs, which really got me off, because Steve Cropper, the guitar player for Green Onions, is the one that most people would know. I love that solo and this sound and everything. I thought, how do you get that sound? And so I tried to work my way up to try and buy myself a guitar like that, a Telecaster. And when the album came out, Soul Dressing, I learned every solo on that album. And I wanted to be, back in the 60s, I wanted to be a psychedelic version of Steve Cropper.
Okay.
But it kind of turned out a little bit like that, because in the band I was in, Fleur de Lis, it was one of the psychedelic bands. It was a bit psycho, but we could play that kind of music. But
one of Bryn Haworth's first jobs was playing with the UK Atlantic Records house band, Fleur de Lis. I asked him about this.
We had our own thing going. We do gigs ourselves, but because Atlantic brought in different artists, we would do their records. And so we did an album with a jazz guitar player called Barney Kessel, who was quite big then. And we did, when the Stax Review came in to London with Otis Redding and Sam and Dave, Dave Porter and Isaac Hayes were the main writers then. And they would come in to the studio at Polydor where we were, and we recorded a lot of their demos and songs that they were working on. So that was a great thrill. And we had another black artist called Donnie Elbert who had a big hit on Sue Records called Little Piece of Leather, which was, and we did a lot of work with him. And then whoever the record company wanted us to record with, we were pretty much in the studio all the time.
While Fleur de Lis was still going well, Bryn took off to the United States. I asked him why he did this.
Most of the music that I liked was American, and I thought, well, if I can make it as a guitar player, then I thought, well, that's really good. And so I thought I've got to give myself a shot. And I met a guy who was in a band, American guy called Lee Stevens, who was in a band called Blue Cheer, who had a huge hit with a song called Summertime Blues. And it was like a heavy metal version of that. And he was wanting to move on and do a different thing. And so I met him in London. He said, well, why don't you come to California, being in my band? And they were going to be called Red Weather. And so I just, sold guitars and stuff. I kept one guitar and sold what I had to buy the ticket and went over to California and started playing with Lee Stevens in his band in San Francisco. And then, it developed, and I met other people, and I ended up in a band called Wolfgang, which was managed by Bill Graham, who was the owner of the Fillmore East and Fillmore West back then, and it was a great band.
In the US, Bryn ended up playing guitar with Wolfgang, a band put together by music promoter Bill Graham. Bryn told me about this time.
Because, you were playing at the Fillmore and the Winterland in San Francisco and all the big gigs, you'd get put on bills with Led Zeppelin and Moody Blues and whoever, with Grateful Dead, anybody who was big in that time, we get on the bill. And the thing is that our band was we had a 2-guitar band and a great singer, and we had a bass player called Lee Sklar, who eventually went with James Taylor. I think most people know him because he had a big, long, white beard.
Yes.
Very distinct. But Lee often says that, that was his happiest time was in that band in Wolfgang, because we were rocking bands, really good.
But, he's played with some amazing people, hasn't he? I think maybe he's played with Joni Mitchell and
everybody.
Crosby, Stills and Nash as well. Yeah.
Jackson Browne, he did that Running on Empty and all that live album.
Okay.
Bryn was doing well again, but decided to return to the UK. I asked why he had done this.
I started writing songs in California, and I just thought, well, maybe I could try and just to get a record deal in England. And so eventually, because I knew a few musicians in England, one of the guys that I met and knew quite well was John Porter, and he was the bass player for Roxy Music at that time, and he was on Island Records. And he said, well, why don't you bring your stuff to Ireland and play it to Richard Williams and see what he thinks. And Richard liked the songs, and he signed me to Ireland. So I did a couple of solo albums with Island Records, and he did some tours supporting Bad Company and Fairport Convention. They put me on tour with all their island acts, and supporting them. Traffic, I supported them for a while in Europe. So it was a really good start,
Yeah. So I suppose in the particularly sort of 73, 74, 75, Ireland was probably the record label to be on, wasn't it? In terms of the kind of cutting edge British music, well, world music perhaps. So,
yeah. Bob Marley was on it. All the guys, yeah.
Around this time, Bryn embraced Christianity. I asked him how he discovered Christianity.
Yeah, well, it's more like Christianity discovered me, really.
Okay.
I think because I wasn't really interested in anything religious. I was just happy smoking my dope and playing guitar and making as much money as I could and enjoying that life. And then, but basically, what happened with me is that I had a very powerful dream one night, and I went to bed, and it was like a rerun of my early life, and there's a lot of painful, hurtful memories came to me, and the dream kept going on and on and on. And there's at the end of every little scene, it would say, "Did you understand this?" And I would go, "No, yes." And so it would carry on. And when I woke up, I knew that I had to. Well, the only thing that I knew was I had to come back to England. That's when I was in California.
Right.
I had to come back to England and try and get right with my father, with my dad, which was completely out of character because I didn't like him. He didn't like me. We'd fallen out. We'd had fist fights, everything. It was a bad, bad relationship. And I'd never thought about him for years. But I just thought, I've got to go home and get right with him. And it was beyond sense, really, because the band I was in, Wolfgang, was doing really well. But I just said, the next day, I just said, I've got to go back to England and sort this out and get this right. And that's when all this started to happen. I found myself there in England, and I thought, well, I'm writing songs, and I mean, it didn't at that time. It didn't work with my dad. I went up to the door, knocked at the door, and he said, "What do you want?"
Mm.
It wasn't the happy ending that you thought it would be. And I thought, crikey, I've come back all the way from California for this. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
He doesn't like me. I don't like him. But there's something gut level that I need to get right here, and I don't know how to fix it. And so my wife and I went to live in North Wales for a while, and again, it kind of opened up our lives in the sense I suddenly realized, how I was living, because I was drinking a couple of bottles of wine every day, smoking dope every day, and I thought, when you're living in Wales in the middle of a sheep farm, kind of thing, you think, why do I need to do all this? And then you start to think about your life. Why? It was time out, basically. Why are you so anxious? Why are you so fearful? Why are you so angry? What, all these questions about my life that I'd never really noticed before. And I think that's when I started going, God, are you there? If you are, you've got to let me know. And, it's like, that's why I was saying that it wasn't really me looking for God in any way. It was just that it started with this dream, and I just carried on. And I mean, I could talk a lot about it because it's a really fascinating subject. To how things, in a sense, you're drawn, through the circumstances of your life, you're drawn to start to think about your life, and is this it? Is this what life is all about? And if it's not, then where do we go? What do we do? And so for me, that question, God, are you there? If you are, you got to let me know, is the best question I've ever asked.
Mm.
Having started writing songs about his faith and recording many of the early gospel albums, Bryn joined the staff team at the new South London Vineyard Church, where he encountered the Mumford family and did some babysitting for them.
John and Ellen Mumford, they're church leaders of the Vineyard, Marcus's parents. And we were in that church in the beginning in 1989. And we lived on the same street, in this cul-de-sac. And so John and Eleanor, when they had Marcus, he was the smallest one of the lot. And so whenever they wanted to go out, if we were in, we'd babysit him. And me being a musician, he loved to come. I mean, he was only like 3 or 4 back then. And he was a bundle of energy. He was so, he was into everything, drums, tambourines, guitars. And it was lovely. It was, I think he just eyed my mandolin. I had a mandolin then, and so I put it on him. I put a strap on him, and took a photograph of him, and he loved that mandolin. And apparently, I think he still has that photograph of when he was about 4 years old with a mandolin on, with a big smile on his face. So maybe we started him off.
As part of the outworking of his faith, Bryn began to do work in prisons.
We do a lot of work in prisons, and that's one of the major problems with, quite a few prisoners we meet say, well, I don't want to leave prison because I can't make it outside. I can't afford to live in a house. I won't get a job. And they would rather stay in prison than they get let out because they know they can't make it. But it's so hard for people to buy and rent homes at the moment, and there does need to be some help. And specifically, there's so many places where you can build houses where it's not going to kill creating the nature, Yeah. But when I came down from London, when I was 17 or 18, I didn't know anybody in London. I ended up in Victoria bus station. I slept in the bus station at night and just wandered around the music shops in Soho and Denmark Street and tried to get a job, get auditions, and then hang around in coffee bars. And I lived in, then I went back to sleep in the bus station. And it's a scary thing to do, to live on the streets. It's really quite hard. And so I have a real passion for that whole thing about homelessness. And it's just the right kind of housing that we need. And it's not these like big mansions kind of thing. Rich. It just isn't right. We need some affordable housing.
I asked Bryn if he ever took his guitar into prison.
Yeah, I do. What I do is I go in on the auspice under the chaplaincy, helping to serve them and whatever they need. And generally that will be involved in on a Sunday morning in a service, either taking the whole service, and I'll play some of my own songs. I'll give them a short talk from the Bible, and then cut some worship songs and pray for the guys at the end. Just get them all to come to the front. Anybody who needs prayer, and that's really, really, we love it. We feel really home in prison. Sorry.
Okay,
but in the afternoon, if there's enough prison officers, what happens is that we'll have a big concert, and I'll do for anybody who wants to come into prison. We'll open it up, and I'll do a couple of hours or an hour and a half just playing songs, stuff that they know, or any requests and things like that. And I'll share my story and tell them about the change that can happen, just amazingly, but by just welcoming this man, Jesus, into your life, and it's we've been doing it nearly about 30 odd years now, this going into prisons on a regular basis every year, and we still love it, and we still feel called to it, and it's just wonderful to see people's lives changed. I mean, there's not many get changed, and there's not a lot. You may not know, there may be more going on than you actually see, but but there are people that write to us and tell us about what's happened with their life, and sometimes we see them, and sometimes they come to a concert, which is fantastic.
Bryn's most recent album, Ready or Not, was released in 2021. I put it to Bryn that this might be his lockdown album.
It definitely was a lockdown album. I had the title. I wanted to do a song called Ready or Not. I didn't know what the song would be like, but I thought that's a great title for an album. And I really enjoyed lockdown, in the sense, we didn't have as much money, but the thing is, we didn't have to travel. We didn't have to go up and down motorways, and we could sleep in our own bed, and it was really nice. And that's why I had more time at home just to sit and think and write about. And these are the songs that we put together for this particular album. So it was really a very creative and constructive time. And in the middle of it, we got to do some really nice sessions with some musicians, socially distanced, of course. But it was great. It was nice to have the time to work on it.
Bryn told me about the title track of the Ready or Not album.
It is a warning, and it's just this whole thing of of I need to be reminded. I mean, the whole thing of Jesus, he said that he would come back again, and the next time he comes back, it would be to wind up things and to make a new heaven and to make a new earth. But it's very clear that he says that he will come back again. And for me, I wrote this song a long time. I had this experience where we've been followers of Jesus for about a year, and we were living in this 2 up, 2 down cottage in East Sussex, I was still smoking dope for that first year because it was my habit. I didn't know how to play guitar unless I got stoned, because that's, you smoke some dope and and then you start playing for ages. That's the way I was living. And I remember just sitting there one night, rolled a big joint, and then I was opening my Bible to read Matthew, where it talks about, and every eye will see him coming again in great power and glory, and all his angels and trumpet sounds. This big scene about him coming back, and I was going, wow, this is far. I mean, the Bible is far out enough. You don't need to smoke dope to read it. The thing is, I was reading this, and we had this big boiler in the house in the back room. And when it came on, it's like the house shook, it's like rumbled and everything shook. And anyway, I was so stoned when the boiler came on. I thought the house was literally flying through the air like the TARDIS, and that Jesus was coming back at this time. I thought, oh no, he's coming back and I'm stoned.
He's going to catch you. Yeah, going to catch you stoned.
Well, the thing is, I'm not ready. I don't want to meet him like this, And it just reminded me right in the beginning that we had this youth leader. He was about 80. He was really old, but he was a great youth leader. And he kept saying, are you living in the light of his coming? And I never forgot that. Are you living in the light of his coming? And I thought that's that. So again, this song, again, Ready or Not, is about that, about living in the light of his coming.
I asked Bryn about track 2 on his album, Boom Baby Boom, in which he seemed to be suggesting that we're never too old to rock and roll.
I saw this video of this elderly couple, and they were jiving. I don't know if you've seen it, but I thought it was really inspiring, because when you get older, it is hard, because you become invisible, you're irrelevant. And your life doesn't seem to matter, and people don't see you; they just want you to go away, kind of thing. But the problem is, you've got so much experience of life, and you've got, especially as a follower of Jesus, because I've seen so much wonderful stuff, amazing things happening in people's life and in my own life. And you go, wow, and you want to carry on. You want to keep living and loving and giving, and you want to find your place. But you need to be tough to do it, because it's easy to get involved in a pity party when you get older. Think, oh, I'm old and nobody likes me anymore, kind of thing. But even if it's finding something new to do, finding another way where you can still keep involved in life, you need to find it. And that's the encouragement about this song. I mean, I kind of wrote it for myself, really, just to keep involved and stay in life, keep involved in life.
One of the lyrically most interesting tracks on the Ready or Not album is We Never Thought That This Could Happen. Bryn explained how this song came about.
I got that one in a dream about 10 years ago. The whole melody and the song and the idea came in a dream, and I kind of wrote it down and got the idea. But then I think when you read a lot of history, and I do love history, when you read a lot of history, you see how easy it is for a way of life that people enjoy and live in all the time, how quickly it can disappear. And you see that time and time again if you read history. And I thought, we're in the middle of stuff like that too. I think so quickly our way of life can disappear, and we end up living in a completely different society, a different way. And that we need to really value the foundations that we have in this life and not throw them out. But it's a lament. It's basically a country lament. I did it in a country style to kind of couch it and make it not so miserable, the subject. But it's basically just by looking at history. I mean, you look at, say, in Germany in the 30s, that Hitler was was loved by the people in Germany. He was a great hero, and he was doing really good stuff for the people, and people loved him. And he was, but then suddenly things started to change, and it turned into a different kind of rule and authority, and just how easy it is for us these days, especially with media, to get involved in leaders and characters and be led by them rather than have your inner leadings. That you need to be discerning about people, especially with the media that we have. You see somebody on TV and you say, oh, well, they seem to be saying really good stuff and thing. But you need to have your own knower. You need to develop your discernment about people and about life, and who you're going to follow. If you're going to follow anybody, just be careful.
I've had conversations with friends about that song when we've agreed that it's definitely about Brexit, but you're saying it's much wider. It's got much wider application.
It's much wider. It is partly about Brexit. We got what we wanted, but we lost what we had. But then again, that line can become, on many levels historically, that people, well, this is what we want, and you get what you want, but it's not really, what you wanted in really. But no, it's kind of wide that subject. But I think it's an interesting way of putting it, making people think about how easy it is to lose your freedom, lose your way of life.
Another interesting lyric from Bryn's album was the track Enough Is Enough.
Well, that started just on a local level, that we live in an area where unusually there's quite a lot of trees, and it's the usual story. It's the story, where the developers come in and start buying up back gardens and want to plant about 50 new houses in the back, cram them in this tiny space, it just broke my heart. I just thought, there was this couple we met on the street, and they were nearly in tears because the builders wanted to, they kept offering them big amounts of money for their house, and because they wanted that to knock their house down and drive into the back and then start building. And they didn't want to do it, but they were being really pressured. And so my wife and I sometimes there's a cause or a fight that you need to get involved in, and it's not every cause. There's particular ones that you need to get involved with, and you feel called to get involved with it, and it just grows, it develops. And this one, we on our street, because since lockdown we've really got to know the neighbours. It's been a great blessing, lockdown, because we developed a WhatsApp group for our street, and we were able to contact people and see how they were with food and just looking after each other generally. And so we had a access into people to start to make them aware about what's happening and what would happen to our street if this happened. And it went on for a couple of years, I think. And eventually the planning commission, it was turned down, and then they applied again, and it was rejected again. So in one sense, that's a victory. I mean, but I just think, I just don't like the way in this country that we get rid of nature so quickly and so quick. And it's not the same just planting new trees. These mature trees that we have are so valuable, and it takes ages for trees to grow. So it's, builders say, oh, well, we'll just plant some new trees in a forest out somewhere, which we own, and I just think it's like on your street. If you've got trees on your street, they'll get lopped off, they'll get chopped down. Suddenly they'll be gone, and you think, no, these trees are really valuable. But it's generally in nature, we don't value our nature and our living spaces together. I think it's really important in England, before it all goes and it's concreted over with roads and railways and stuff, And
we've got to plant the right trees in the right places, haven't we?
You do, yeah. So I wrote a song about it, and then we did a video about it too.
And you have been listening to Bryn Haworth talking to me, John Hebden. Thanks to Bryn for his time, thanks to Alan Gibson for setting up the interview, and thank you to you for listening. And please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out some of the other videos. See you soon.